And live. Hi everybody. This is my first time streaming for Pixelogic ZBrush. My name is Aiman Akhtar. So I'm gonna just try to open up these tabs, and you might hear double audio for a second because I want to test that it's working before I start streaming for you guys. Honored to be here. Let's see what this sounds like. And live. Perfect. Hi everybody. That's when you're probably hearing double audio. Cool. Alright, now that I've confirmed that's working on YouTube, let's double check it's working on Twitch. This is exciting. I've streamed before. I teach online at Mold 3D Academy, and I stream for my students when I teach 3D printing for ZBrush artists. But this is my first time streaming to the whole World Wide Web at the same time. Alright, cool. Twitch seems to be working. Let's test the audio here. But this is my first time streaming to the whole. Sweet. Alright, so it's working there as well. Alrighty. Hope you like my desktop. I'm pretty excited about the Deadpool movie. Looking forward to watching it. Couldn't this weekend because I was traveling, but I'll probably catch it during this week. Okay. So I'm going to open up a couple of images and then just give you guys a brief primer about me, myself, and what I've done and what I do. And then we'll get started on some sculpting. So it'll be a good Monday morning sculpt exercise. Alright, got that stuff open. Alright, so that's me. If you can see it on screen, I'm sure you can. That's me and my wife, Fa, and we are displaying our toys, Fungisaurs, little dinosaur mushroom hybrids. We started our own toy line last year, and we launched them at DesignerCon in Pasadena. It's a big toy fair expo. And my background is that I'm a 3D sculptor. So I've been sculpting professionally for about 10 years. And I started my own toy line because I really got into 3D printing. And with 3D printing came the possibilities for me to just make something in ZBrush, see it in reality. So I started doing that more and more and more. Let's see. So 2 years ago, I went to DesignerCon with 3D prints of my own Fungisaurs line, unpainted, just to see how they would do. And they did pretty well. And that inspired me to start a toy line. And so 3D printing was kind of my gateway into, mass productions, so to speak. And last year, we did the official Kickstarter launch. Fa did all the designing for the brand. So she did all the box, the packaging, the logo, the website. We're working on an app. So it's a lot of exciting stuff. And what I want to show you is how I went from point A to point B. I'm going to keep on checking the chat. Hi there on Twitch. Cool. Alright, and I'll say hi there on YouTube as well. Sweet. Joints, please do joints. Hi Eric, nice to meet you. Meet you. Okay, cool. So today I'm going to basically start by sculpting a Fungisaur, a new character for my series. But before I do that, I wanted to show you guys a little bit. So let me open Kickstarter here. Kickstarter. Fungisaurs. Alright, so if you guys go to Kickstarters on Fungisaurs, you'll see the campaign that we launched, my wife and I, last November. And we did something crazy. We decided to launch toys, an animation, and an augmented reality mobile game app at the same time. So the animation, obviously work in progress, is going to take some time. But 1 year from the date of the Kickstarter, because it was a successful Kickstarter and a lot of people got on board, I want to try to deliver all these toys. So we're in mass production now on our own little mystery box series. And let me make this window a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. Hopefully that'll translate. I think it does. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so mystery box toys have been all the craze in stores for, I don't know, a couple of years, and so I decided I'll just launch my own. This is the box, beautifully designed by my wife, and the mini box as well. Put this off to the side. And so here you can see the 8 different types of Fungisaurs that we've created. Pop open the box, and this is all prototype. Mass production is underway now. Toys should be shipping in, hopefully, fall. My first time working with all these factories, so new learning experience. And here's one Fungisaur right now. This is a 3D print, printed on a Form 2 3D printer. You can actually see my Form 2s right there. And this 3D print is of a character I call Chick Wrap. And Chick Wrap is a chicken mushroom hybrid with a velociraptor. And so that's basically what Fungisaurs is all about. My backstory was that a scientist in a lab created these little dinosaur mushroom hybrids because he wanted to create a new species, and he wanted to create something versatile, something that could survive. And what better that would survive than dinosaurs with 65 million years of, dominance. Millions of years they lived on this planet, and mushrooms themselves are their own fascinating kingdom in the story of life on our planet. So we launched the Kickstarter. From our latest update, I can show you, we are now in mass production, so the toys, even though they're pretty small, the Chick Wrap you've seen right here, that needs to get sliced and keyed for mass production. And then you can see when it is in mass production, these are 3D prints that then get used for tooling. And tooling is the process of taking a prototype, your first toy, and then making the metal mold that the wax piece will just get melted out from in order to make all of the, mass-produced toys in soft PVC plastic. There's the first round of prototypes from our factory. There's some paint feedback that I was giving them. And there's some first progress on our app and animation. So if you're interested in watching Fungisaurs' journey, you can follow us on Instagram. You can check out Fungisaurs on Kickstarter, and then just fungisaurs.com. Today I'm going to start making some more Fungisaurs. So first things first is a sketch. Oftentimes it starts with just a really simple idea and translating that idea into 3D. So before I even really nail down any of the specifics, I just want to start with an appealing character design. Here's the little Stegosaurus design that I drew in my little sketch wallet. And what I want to do is start taking it from this design into 3D. Now this is before I've even figured out what mushroom I want to blend this Stegosaurus with, because Fungisaurs is really an exercise in sculpting for me. It's an excuse for me to sculpt. Same as with this stream. It gives me a reason to have a personal project to keep working on my craft and keep becoming a better sculptor every day. So this is basically what I'm going to start with. And that means I'm going to first start, not in ZBrush, but in Photoshop. Okay. Let's bring this back down. I see a lot of questions. Sweet, this is going to be fun. All right. Bear with me because it's my first stream, remember. It'll take me some time to get on to answering your questions and getting good at this streaming thing. All right. All right, so now I'm gonna scale the cam back down because it's a bit big, isn't it? There you go. Nope, too small. There it is. Okay. My bad. I was trying to show you the little Stegosaurus. That's the one we're going to work on. There's a little iguanodon down below too. It's an idea of a little thumbs up. And you can see my drawings are super sketchy, super rough. I'm definitely not a 2D master. My thing has always been 3D. I think in shapes. I think in sculpture. So first thing I'm going to do is prep this image so I can take it into ZBrush and start sculpting. That's the first part of my process. I often start with a really crappy sketch, fix it up in Photoshop, then take it into ZBrush, and that's my base starting point. So I'm going to crop this image. I'm going to do an image adjustments levels. Crank up the levels a little bit. Do a bit of desaturation. All right. And I'm going to save this image out now as its own thing. So I'll call this Stego Ref. That's my reference. JPEG, PNG, TIFF, doesn't really matter in my case. And let's open up ZBrush. While I do that, let me check out some of your questions. Love those prints, nice, thanks. I want them. Well, the toys should be available. I'm hoping to launch in November DesignerCon this year. So at that point, I'll try to get them online. Who are you getting to 3D print them? 31030 asks on Twitch. I'm printing them myself. I've got my own company set up, 3D Smiths, and I do printing for other people as well as for myself. All right, window still large, shrunk that down. Shapeways, I have used Shapeways in the past, but for printing in really high-res detail and prototyping in particular, especially if you're doing it a lot, I recommend getting your own 3D printer. I'm not printing all of them for mass distribution. No, there'll be 16,000 toys that are coming in fall. So those will all be mass produced in a factory. 3D printing helped me basically do the prototypes, and I'll show you more of the prototypes in a second. Actually, you know what would be fun is if I show you the first line first. So let me go to my Fungisaurs folder, navigate over to these all Fungisaurs. Do this by date. There you go. I'll open up the full first edition series of 8 Fungisaurs so you can see what they look like. Ah, cool, cool. All right. Let me change my document size a little bit, be a bit friendlier for you guys. I'll double this up. And then I'll click AA half. That'll just do some anti-aliasing so you'll be able to see it a bit cleaner. So here's my first edition 8 Fungisaurs that'll be launching in November in my mystery box. So you'll be able to pick out the box. You don't know which one you're going to get, but the price point hopefully is enough that you're going to want to collect all of these cute critters. From left to right, that's Paradots, Trishroomops, Chickrap, C-Rex. That's a chanterelle mushroom mixed with a T-Rex, therefore C-Rex. Braco, Pterocaps, so death cap mushroom mixed with a pterodactyl. Scaly Anky, and a Salamander. Salamander is a pretty popular one. It's a Dimetrodon, which is technically not a dinosaur, but it existed in the same time as dinosaurs, so I'm counting it in. Mixed with a turkey tail mushroom. So these are the kind of designs that I'm shooting for. I'm trying to make them really appealing designs. You can see really big eyes, big head ratio to smaller body. They're kind of babies, you know, that's why they're about that yay small. So this is what I want to do today. I want to make another new Fungisaur. Pixel Desire says, love the names. Thank you. All right. Looking here on YouTube chat as well. Got to keep up on the comments here. Eric Michael's asking, would you ever release the files for makers? That's an awesome question, Eric. I do love this whole open source movement, in which a lot of makers like myself share their designs freely on the web for people to be able to print them out on their own. I think from a quality control kind of standpoint, and until I get my toy business up and running, because it's a new toy venture, I won't put the files up online, but never say never. I'm definitely down to experiment with places like Thingiverse and Pinshape and even Gumroad, or just putting the files up online for free, maybe even selling the files. It's all worth testing to see what the new market's going to be like. I think in short order, maybe in 10 to 20 years, a lot of people will have access to 3D printers that can print in color really well. And maybe then we won't need to be mass producing toys in a different country. Maybe we'll be able to just directly have, you know, the toy made on an order by order basis and then shipped directly to people's homes. So that's an exciting possibility. All right. So now that you guys have seen a bit of my aesthetic, I've talked a bit about what I've done and what I've made with this toy line in particular. I'll talk more about my experience as a 3D artist in Los Angeles in other streams, because I've been working here professionally for 4 years, all sorts of gigs. Right now, I want to just focus on, making one Fungisaur, so just one project for this stream, and then trying to keep up with answering your questions. Okay. So for this, I'm just going to start with a clear, clean, open scene. I'm going to go to my texture tab, and I'm going to import in my Stego reference image that I had saved. So that was here. Open that up. And the first thing you want to do is have kind of a reference image in your ZBrush. Let me check that this is still working fine. You guys can see it? Yes, cool. So I'm going to select my image, and I'm going to click Add to Spotlight. What this will do is make the image really big up on my ZBrush screen. I can tweak the opacity a little bit. I can adjust the scale, and I can kind of place it off to the side. Because this isn't one-to-one, I'm not tracing on top of it. I'm just going to use this as a reference in my scene, and I'll press Z to drop that to my canvas. And one thing you always want to make sure of, I kind of have this custom user interface you can see. That's kind of designed specifically for me and the way I like to work. But what you can do is you have to make sure to turn off spotlight projection. And I believe that's under Brush, Samples, Spotlight Projection. Because with that on, it kind of prevents you from smoothing or using some of your more intricate brushes sometimes. So make sure you turn off spotlight projection if you're using the spotlight to bring in reference. Now there's many ways obviously to start sculpting in ZBrush. You can just start with a sphere, turn it into a polymesh 3D. You can start just moving pieces around. You can even go to some fun brushes like, say, your snake hook, and start extracting some of these pieces, right? You also have the ability to now in new ZBrush, and this is one of my favorite new features. Check this out. With the snake hook brush as it is, it kind of gives up after a little bit. It only can do what the topology limits it to do. However, now there's this new button, Sculptress Pro Mode, and when you activate that, the snake hook brush works completely differently. Like it almost creates its own topology as it goes along, which is really fantastic. So I'm going to use the Sculptress Pro Mode to just shape very quickly a little base for myself. And this is just kind of the body, creating a lump, a little potato. You can see I'm not even working symmetrically right now because I'm just thinking out loud to myself. If I ever did want to start working symmetrically, I can go down to my geometry, modify topology, and I can do a mirror and weld. In the X, that basically mirrored it this way. And if I want to work, yeah, let's work in X. That'll be good. And now I can press X to turn on my symmetry and kind of work it this way. Let's make this the front of my body. Smooth it out. Just look at the shape. I mean, literally this is just a potato, but this is one of my favorite ways of starting a sculpt, just looking at the big base shapes, one piece at a time. This is a technique I actually learned from Michael DeFeo, who's an awesome instructor, also on ZBrush workshops, also on where I teach, Mold 3D Academy. And Mike worked at Blue Sky and worked on Ice Age and a whole bunch of your favorite animated films. And one thing he taught me as a modeler is to not just jump right into the details, but just look at the base shapes of objects and just try to break them down a bit. And his technique was to start with lots and lots of little pieces. So that can be the head, that can be the body. Let's duplicate it again. We can turn this piece into the tail. We can do different pieces for different parts of the anatomy, sculpt each of those individually, and then try to create a whole that's more interesting. And also gives you the most control. Now keep in mind this is a preference kind of thing. You can start this way if you'd like, or you can just do your own thing. There's lots of different ways to start sculpting something in ZBrush. You can use the Z spheres. Those are really fun and fantastic. You can use like a base mesh, you know, like the old school game modeling workflow. You can start with the base mesh that you created in Maya, in Modo, in any other application, import it into ZBrush. Or, you know, for sculpting's sake, especially the fun sculpting part, you might as well start with, you know, something here. All right, let me make sure. Mordekainer says, not just a potato, is a red wax potato. Oh, yeah. And Kurt, nice to see you, man. Got some students here from Mold 3D representing. Awesome. All right, Heretic Templar asks, what's the name of my 3D printing company? That is 3D Smiths. So actually, yeah, for those of you interested in that, you can just go to 3dsmiths.com. And that's my 3D printing company. We specialize in transforming 2D characters into 3D sculptures. So I work with a lot of artists on their 2D designs into 3D. And there's a lot more stuff on the site, so you can go check that out yourself. All right, gonna keep focused on this, try to answer a question once in a while. All right, red wax is an awesome material. I personally prefer RS Sculpey. It's a great one just to see the shapes and not get caught up in a lot of the matte cap features. All right, so looks like a bit like a armadillo-y rat kind of thing right now. But, you know, Mike's technique is all about breaking down the shapes into really more and more blocks. So this one, for example, the head, this is made up of one big shape here. The little mouth is its own shape. So rather than sculpt it all out of this one head, I'm going to break it down. Just use the clip curve brush to kind of make this the back of the head shape. And I'm going to I can keep duplicating my meshes here, my subtools, in order to make new pieces. Or I can even use something like the insert brushes. So insert primitives here, insert sphere, navigate over to the center. I can draw that on. What's cool about the insert brushes is that it's part of the same subtool. So it's not like I need a new subtool every time I make a new piece. I can just kind of, you know, insert a piece, say this is part of the head, so just keep it together, a bit more organized. Now it looks like a bit of like a duck-billed platypus. All right, cool. So again, insert mesh allows me to work with this as part of the same mesh, so I can move both of these pieces together, or if I want a lot more control, I can just split parts off and keep them on separate subtools. So in this case, I'm going to split unmasked points, and just keep it on separate subtools, just to, for now, have more control. Okay. All right, how about some music while we're getting on this too, since we're going to be mostly sculpt streaming now. Found a whole bunch of royalty-free music, so let's start playing some of this, see if we like any of it. Nope, that one's very pop. Change the volume settings here a bit. How about that? Nope. That's fun. Let's go with that. All right, cool. Let's keep this stream rolling. So now I have the option to alt-click on any of my pieces really quickly and just sculpt them really quickly. So now I can look at this, just the shapes. I see there's a bit of an arch. So I'm going to try to get that in to my mesh. That arch really is what makes it kind of fun. I want to make the head nice and big because when I think of these little Fungisaur creatures, I think of them as babies. And if you look at babies, they all have a really weird big head to small body proportion. Kind of looks like a Diglett right now. Nice. Got this. All right. Make sure your symmetry is on. And if at any point you lose your symmetry and you mess it up, you can always go to Geometry, Modify Topology, and Mirror. Mirror and Weld. All right, that looks pretty good as far as the big base. I'm going to go back to Insert again. Insert Primitives, Insert Sphere. Try to add that little big part at the end. Move that up into place. Now this is more of something Ankylosaurus would have, like a big club at the end of the tail. But for the Stegosaurus, which usually had spikes on the tail, I might not be able to do spikes for mass production. So it's something I have to keep thinking about when I model now, especially these creatures, because I might end up taking them through injection molding process. You want to think about this right now when you're in the 3D printing stages. What will you be able to do? Because, for example, if I do a bunch of stuff like this, this is going to be hard to actually make a mold for. A Stegosaurus would have something more like this, but that might be hard to make a mold of as well. So we'll see. We'll just kind of play it by ear. I do like what's happening here. I like this insert primitive sphere, and I can use that to create these little big bulges for the body as well. You know what? Let's just make the one leg and then dupe it over multiple times. So it'll kind of save us time and energy. All right, this right now, you can see that the mesh doesn't go in all the way to the body, where I want it to kind of intersect with the body, and that's controlled by the depth slider. The depth slider, I believe, is under Brush, Depth. So all of your brushes have a depth, especially all the insert primitives. It's really useful, because now you see when I change the depth a bit lower, it intersects with the body more. Change it even more, you can see it intersects with the body even more. So you can really choose these things. ZBrush gives you a lot of options to customize and work that way. We got Sculptress Pro mode on because I really don't care about the topology right now. It's just really all about the form and the shapes. I like that. Let's split that off. Let's duplicate it. Use my Move Transpose Tool. I'm still a fan of these old school transpose bars. Not the Gizmo as much. What about you guys? Do you guys like the Gizmo? It's useful for certain things. I guess it's just a matter of preference and getting used to it. Maybe I should make a custom gizmo. Alright. So you can see this technique really gives you a lot of freedom to just look at the shapes, not really concern yourself with detailing at this point. Duplicated that shoulder subtool to now create my feet. And I'm just going to use the clip curve brush to kind of clip them, just like that. So first I sculpt a little bit, and then I'll clip them. And this will help me figure out what the ground plane is as well. John Rigetto says, I like the gizmo, but that's what I'm learning on. Really need to learn how to use the Transpose Tool also. Yeah, Transpose Tool is pretty nice. It's kind of easier for me to get used to because I've worked with it for a while. But basically you can just draw the line out, and whatever direction you draw the line out is the direction you can, do something with it. So this move will be affected directionally based on the angle I just drew. And what's cool about the transpose line is you can just tap on a face normal and it'll kind of adjust to that face normal, which is really useful because now I can rotate from that face normal, for example. Alright, so there's the kind of first base of the leg. And I kind of like what's going on. Because I've got the independence of all of these being on separate subtools, I can kind of keep adjusting my proportions on the fly. I like that. At any point I want to just say this is good, I can merge all these down and, keep on chugging along. Let's move this up a little bit. I don't know if you guys can hear this over the webcam, but a lot of the times I'm using a combination of my Cintiq, but I'm also using a mouse, good old mouse, because it's just easier to work some ways, So don't worry about having all the nice tools and toys. It took me years before I had a Cintiq. I always used to do stuff on a Wacom and mouse, so that's still my habits. Okay. Alright, I like that. Let's add some little toes to the stegosaur. So far, I've just been enjoying using the Insert Sphere brush, so I'll do that again. Insert a sphere there, insert a sphere there, and there. And I'll go again to the clip curve and just clip it down. I can Dynamesh these pieces together, and it should merge these two, varying pieces of topology. If I go to Geometry, Dynamesh, just let's see what 128 resolution looks like. Pretty low res. Let's crank that up a bit. That looks pretty good. And since I have Sculptress Pro mode on, I can just press smooth and it'll start changing the topo on the fly. And again, I don't care about resolution right now. I don't care about how good this looks. This is just exploring the design stage of something. So I don't really care about final topology, final anything. It's kind of freeing in that sense. Kind of little gecko feet there, but that's kind of cute. Maybe bring these up a little bit right here. Yeah, that's pretty cute. All right. Then let's go ahead and merge these legs together. Always okay. Okay. So there's now my one piece, and I can press Control W to just give it all the same group if I want. I don't need to yet. I think it might actually help to have different groups on these, so I can click Auto Groups and just kind of keep them all unique and separate. That way, if I use something like my Move Topological brush, it'll know only to affect one geometry piece at a time rather than move everything. All about control, really. I'm going to duplicate those front legs, move them back down. There you go, I've got some back legs now. Now it's been a while since I saved, and that's terrifying. So I'm going to start saving right now. Let's call this Stego 1. Alright, cool. So there's a good little base for me. Now I can start coming in and working some of the details, like figuring out what this head looks like. I love heads, so that'll be the first place I'll start. Let's see. Pro4201 says mouse is the killer of hands. Yes, absolutely it is. But, you know, a lot of people I know have been using Cintiqs and Wacom pens and start developing a lot of pain problems from that as well. Okay, cool. Hey, Alyssa, nice to see you here as well. It's great to have some friends on here. Mag VFX, what's up, Miguel? Thanks for checking it out. All right, so let's keep rolling. Now that I've got a little base mesh made and saved, now let's move on to step 2, which is let's start sculpting up this head. Get fun with it. These eyes are a big feature of the head. So what I want to do first is create a custom insert mesh brush for my eyes. So let's start with that. I'll switch to my simple brush and let's make an eyeball. I'll start with the sphere 3D, draw that down, make it a polymesh 3D. I can divide it up a little bit, get some resolution in there. Let's, not enough resolution there. I want to get a bunch of resolution. Get this thing up to 2 million. Let's go one more. 8 million polys. All right. That way when I select my mask, it's super crisp, or pretty crisp. All right, how do I do this the best way? I think I'm going to select a bunch of this eyebrow here, or a bunch of this eye, invert this, go to my Move, Transpose. Those of you that were asking about the Transpose tool, check this feature out. I can basically select from here and drag in, and it's going to start dragging inside my mesh. And if we look at it from the side, you see what's happened, it's kind of concave that in. So it started taking in that part of the mesh, which is pretty dope. And I can switch to my mask circle, drop this mask, draw another one. And now I've got the center selected. Might want to just unselect the back here. There you go. I'm going to control tap on the side of the screen to reverse this. And again, I'll use the Transpose tool again. This time, I'll draw from the side in a little bit. And then I'm going to take that concave piece and bring it back out. Look at that. Too much. I need to be selecting from the inside here. There you go. And there's my pupil start coming out. Take that a bit further. Make it really nice and coney. And then just kind of push it back in a bit. Now that isn't exactly perfect. I can also go to my geometry, modify topology, mirror and weld to kind of make it a bit more perfect. Let's see if it works with 8.3 million polys. It did. Nice. And we can mirror and weld in the Y as well to just really make it more seamless. There you go. That's pretty clean right now. And again, remember, this is just for design phase experimentation, so this serves my purposes really well. Let's do a little Dynamesh on this. See what 128 resolution looks like. Too little. Let's crank this up to 500. That's about 650,000 polys. That's pretty good. Smooth that out a bit. but I don't want my Sculptress Pro mode on right now. Smooth out the whole thing a bit. Dynamesh again. And this will be a good start of an eyeball for me. Just at least a placeholder to see what this looks like. So what I can come to this do and now is just look at it straight on, and I can go to create insert mesh. I'll create a new insert mesh, and there's my little PMD 3D Sphere 03. Go back now to my Stego, and I can use that insert mesh brush to kind of create in some eyeballs. Yoink! So again, remember, insert mesh brushes really depend on the depth slider, and I want these buried in a little bit. So I'll lower that and then draw them in. Pretty nice. Immediately, eyes just make your character a lot cuter. And in this case, I want really nice and big eyes, so get off to the side a little bit more as well, so that you can see them from the sides. This looks pretty cute. Let's also use the transpose again to make them a bit taller. See if we like ovular eyes for this character. It's pretty cute. I'm going to probably bury them into the head a bit more. Might add eyelids as well. We'll see about that. And let's split these off to their own group as well. Split unmasked points. There you go. I might actually name this as well. Keep my scene a bit organized. Alright, so eyes being the windows to our soul, now we've got the beginnings and start of a character. Let's sculpt this snout up a bit. Let's make a little bit of a mouth as well. I'm going to duplicate this piece, bring it down. There we go. And that'll be my lower jaw. Let's kind of clip this up. There you go, it's pretty cute. That doesn't look like it's symmetrically working well, so I'm going to try again to mirror and weld this. There you go. Yeah, sometimes even with symmetry on, your mirror and weld just doesn't work perfectly. Or you just, miss it sometimes. So, helps to just mirror and weld regularly. I can start upping the resolution now if I want to, see a bit more of a smoother finish. Dynamesh at a bit of a higher resolution. Smooth it out. And one thing I forgot to mention is what I'm going to try to do with this stream, since this is fun sculpting time, but also practicing prototyping time for me, I'm going to try to print out these guys at the end of every stream. So I don't know if I'm going to get to printing this today. Definitely want to keep, get a sculpt to a good place, but I'm going to 3D print it out and then show it to you on the next stream. So join me again next Monday because I'll be showing off the print of this guy. So you can see my workflow is to start with these basic shapes, get around to adding the higher resolution, start dynameshing, smoothing pieces out, and then really, constantly thinking about the forms. I think it's kind of cute when it's got a little bit of a smaller brain there. I'm going to make that a bit of a cone. These eyes actually, maybe bring them further back into this head. Let's see what that looks like if we start sculpting. Mirror and weld. Alright, now I'm going to switch to my favorite brush, which is the damn standard brush. Actually do some sculpting on this character. I like having an eyebrow ridge kind of immediately figured out, so I know. I'll switch to my clay tubes brush as well, because that's really great for blocking in. Might lower my Dynamesh resolution, it's a bit high at 200. You know what, this probably doesn't need that much bulk at the bottom. You definitely don't want to be too gaunt. You want some nice cheeks in there, because otherwise it's going to look really... if you get rid of the cheeks, it makes the character look really old. And in this case, I want these all to be little babies. It's like he's almost blushing a little bit. Now, my reference has these eyes really close together and really big. So I think I'm going to try that. I'm going to try to stick with my gut. Make these eyes even bigger. And bring them together. It just creates a more derpy character that way, you know? And derpy is fun. Go back to this. Back the snout. Much better. Just really experimenting and playing with the shapes at this stage, you know? You know what? I think I need some eyelids to give him more of that droopy feel. So what I can do is... yeah, let's do it. Let's try it. I'm going to duplicate the eyes mesh. Move it up a little bit. I'm going to use my select lasso tool to just hide a bunch of this stuff. And I'll delete hidden. And that's, for you guys, is under Geometry, Modify Topologies, Delete Hidden. And I'm going to Dynamesh those little pieces. Dynameshing should close those holes and give me a nice little base mesh to start my eyelids from. I don't really care that they're joined together. Just going to use them to start up my eyelids. A little base. Redbeard, what? Hey Matt, what's going on, man? Like the support from fellow ZBrush streamers. Thanks for tuning in, dude. Alright, those are looking cute. Let's use our clip curve brush to kind of make it a bit more sharp. Sharp eyelids. Make that ledge a bit further out. Now keep in mind these are going to be printed pretty small, so you want to make your ledges pretty big. Now if I lower these eyelids a lot, he's going to start looking sleepy. So I want to find that right balance between sleepy and cute. Try merging the space in between, inflating. That's looking good. Let's duplicate that whole eyelid cluster and see about making the bottom eyelids from there. So I'll use my Transpose Tool to just kind of invert that. And you can see that it actually does flip the normals of the geometry. So I can go to my display properties up here and click flip. And that should fix that. Lots of fun little things in ZBrush, you just have to know where to look. And now I've got my lower eyelids from those. Now I want to be careful with the lower eyelids. With my characters, I make them pretty small because the lower eyelids, if they're showing too much, then your character just looks older again. Looks a bit tired when you have lower eyelids. You can see when I work, I like to bounce around and look at the model from all sides. Pretty important part of the process. Make sure you're not just stuck in the one way. Go to my damn standard brush again. Get a little ledge in there. It's looking better. Let's take a look at some more questions. Matt's digging the design of this Fungisaur. Cool. Thank you very much, Matt. Now, when I'm thinking about 3D printing all the time in the back of my head, I always think about these little gaps and what to do with them. I always try to fill in any gaps because I know once something goes into mass production, that's just more areas for problems. All right. I do have a bit of droopiness you can see in this character where the eyelids are coming over the pupil. So let's try that. Let's not be afraid of taking some risks. It is a personal project after all anyway. What's the harm? I like it. It's kind of like I can't even right now. I can't even. Stego's having a Monday morning. All right, let's lower this snout down so we can see a bit more of that lower eyelid. That'll help bulge it out. Anytime I feel like the geometry's too high res and it's fighting me, I'm just gonna go in and lower it. Even lower. Even lower. There we go. That way at least my smooth brush will work really fast. Let's see if this lower eyelid is helping or not. If it's not helping, I toss it. So we'll see. You know what? I feel it's not helping. It just makes the character seem older. So I'm just going to toss that lower eyelid. Delete it. Cool. Better. Alright, now I'm going to go into my damn standard brush again. Make some little nostrils. Nice. One thing I really liked about the idea of creating this creature was having a little tongue hanging out, kind of like a dog. So I'm going to do that. Let's create some separation between the upper jaw and the lower jaw. Make this character look up a little bit more. Might rotate that whole thing. Sculpting is a process. You always have to just give it its time to help find what's there. I admire sculptors like Michelangelo that were able to just know what was on the inside of that marble and just help bring it out. But I'm more of a clay sculptor, where I like to figure out what I'm making, reveal it through part of the process. Like a little eyebrow ridge. Just laughing at myself. Laughing at this little cute creature. Always check the size. You know, you got to bring it down to the size that'll actually be printed on your screen so you can, you know, get a sense of it. Let's jump away from the head for a second. Lower that butt down a bit. See if that makes it a bit cuter. Big butts, just cuter in general. At least for these kind of cute little characters. Alright, good. Let's go back to the eyes. Go back to my damn standard brush. You can see I've got a bunch of them on this shelf down here for myself. How are we doing on time? It is 8:56. We're almost halfway through the stream, guys. Not bad for halfway. Did a little bit of an intro. Did a big base mesh. And now I'm going to see how far we can get with this sculpt. Switch to my pinch brush. Really, ZBrush has got so many cool brushes for you to play around with, figure things out. All right, that's enough playing with the eyebrows, or the eyes, the eyelids, for now. Sometimes I just like to noodle. Noodle with things that don't matter much. Or maybe they do. Alright. It's moving right along. I want this character to feel a bit derpy. Not old, just derpy. What's happening here? That makes him seem a bit crotchety. So, moving it back down. Whoop, whoop. That's kind of cute. Fun to draw a little snout on a character. Alright, now let's add in that tongue. So I'm going to go to my damn standard brush. Make a nice big ledge for the mouth. Something that would read when it prints. And go to my insert mesh. Now, obviously character won't have two tongues, so I can turn off symmetry when I draw this on. And that'll be the first bit of asymmetry on this character. Derpy little tongue hanging out. I want to make it look more like a tongue as well. And thinking about 3D printing, you want to make sure that there's not a big gap right there. Like 3D printing doesn't like, you know, pieces that float on their own so much because they might break very easily. Mass production really doesn't like those pieces because they'll You know, say even if you're molding and casting, resin will get stuck up in the grooves, in the crevices. Bleh. Does this happen to you guys? Do you ever make the expressions of the characters you're like sculpting? So you'll just be making an intense character, you'll be really intense. You're making a fun character, you'll be fun. Good way to control your mood. All right, I'm gonna split that tongue off. Matt's asking, are you already planning another set of Fungisaurs? Yeah, absolutely, man. I've got the first 8, so now let's make the next 8. And yeah, all the time. I'm sure I've seen you make all the faces. And the sound effects. Oh, yeah. All right, there you go. Tongue is split off. I'm going to rename that. Call it tongue. All right, now, could make it really big. For now, I think I'll leave it like this size. Come back to it later. Gotta make sure it looks like a tongue from all angles, not just the one that you're looking at. There you go, much better. Keep coming back to these eyelids. I'm trying to figure out what this character's really expression should be. Should he be surprised? Should he be a bit dopey? Should he be a bit mopey? And your eyelids and your eyebrows control a lot of that. You can make him a bit, you know, sad, a bit confused. Yeah, much better. Kind of nerdy too now. You can think about if I want to have like a cheek, have some jowls. Not a bad idea on this character. Might want those on like the older version of the character. Maybe for now. No. But that's nicer already. If I bring the cheeks up to kind of serve the purpose of the lower eyelids, kind of break the silhouette of those eyes, then also kind of looks like he's smiling, a bit friendly, you know? Want to make sure that you save. Save all the time. Up-res all the time. So that's Stego 2 now. Alright. Liking that. Let's get moving on the body. We'll go geometry divide. Let's Dynamesh that. You know what I would like to see is a bit more wrinkling around the neck area. So let's add those. I'm using my damn standard brush here to just kind of experiment. Add at least one wrinkle. This kind of makes him cuter and pudgier, you know? Kind of hippo-esque. Can inflate that up a bit if I want to accentuate it. And inflating actually makes wrinkles really feel like wrinkles. You can't just damn standard, you got to inflate a bit as well. Fill it in. Digging that? Let's go ahead and now start thinking about what makes a Stegosaurus a Stegosaurus. Its plates. Now, thinking about plates for a Stegosaurus is completely natural. However, since I'm making Fungisaurs, those dinosaur mushroom hybrids, instead of plates, I might instead try to put fungi. So let's take a look at what kind of fungi should I use for this. Let's actually just do a default mushroom and see what that looks like first. This is the initial experimental design stage for a character. So you know what? I'm going to create another insert mesh. Let's start with a sphere 3D. Make that a poly mesh. I'm gonna clip curve that. Kind of just make it half of what it is. So that gives me a little bit of a mushroom shape. Let's make it even more shroomy. And let's make it a bit taller. Nice. Let's make sure that I can work this X and Z at the same time. There we go. And now, let's see, do I want, no I don't. Do I want it this way? Maybe. Let's keep it like that. And duplicate it. Move it down. And that can be my stem. Alright, Matt. No worries, man. Thanks for showing up. Appreciate the support. Okay. Alright, I like that. Simple mushroom basic shape. So let's go with that. I'll merge these two pieces together. I will, since they're two separate meshes still, I'm going to dynamesh them. Go into my geometry dynamesh. 128 resolution is a bit low. That works. Smooth that out. And again, now with creating an insert mesh brush, I don't want to look at it head on. I want to look at it from top down. So now I can go into my insert mesh brush and say create insert mesh. There we go. I'll create a new one again. There it is. And then obviously if you name it in here, that'll be the name of your insert mesh brush. So if you want to keep a bunch of insert mesh brushes, always be good with the naming. These ones are relatively easy, so I'm not worrying too much. And there we go. Our insert mesh brush is working properly. Now we can see it's fun to draw them on, but I kind of want them right down the middle ridge. So we want to make sure these two red points come to meet, and then you draw it on, like that. Also want it to be a bit buried into the back, so I'm going to lower the depth. And that you can see is way too much. It kills the stem entirely. You gotta do a little bit of experimentation to find the perfect depth amount. That's pretty nice. Let's look at it from the top. Navigate down to the middle. And let's just draw a few of these out. I'll make them bigger as I go along the back. And then smaller as they come down here as well. Interesting. Hard to tell when you're all looking at it just from the one angle, but I want these to be a lot more, as you can see in my reference, a lot more kind of joint together rather than all being separate pieces, because this will become hard to mold and mass produce anyways. So let's have the mushrooms touching each other and be a lot bigger. So move this back up into place. I can just press Control Z. Let's make these bigger as well. And don't mind the intersection. I think this should give me what I'm looking for. One way to find out. Nice. At least a good starting point. I'll probably continue those down the tail a bit too. What? Okay. And these last ones can be pretty tiny. And might even bury those last ones. With the transpose tools, if you control select and drag from one to the other, it'll kind of select that entire subtool or entire mesh. You can just kind of bury these as if they're little mushrooms that haven't sprouted yet. And we can always actually sculpt. So use our sculpt brushes, make sure symmetry's on. Let's do that. That's the fun part, the sculpting. All right, let's do the same thing here. Ease in that transition. Hope you guys are enjoying this stream. It's pretty fun for me so far. All right, I might want to find a happy medium here. So maybe something like that. And I'll probably have these guys also be a bit buried in. So it'll look like the really big shrooming mushrooms are on the back. Hoebe asks, hey Aiman, where are you from? Your accent sounds very familiar. Ahoy, I'm originally from Pakistan and I lived in Chicago for most of my life, so I guess it's a bit of a Midwest accent. And now I'm in LA. All right. Check out these comments on YouTube as well. Mateus, nice to see you on here as well, man. All right. Love your tutor. Learn ZBrush in no time. Yeah, guys, if you're interested in my class, I teach on Mold 3D Academy. Okay. Lots of comments on here. Hard to get to all of the answers if I want to finish this in time, guys, so I'm going to try to prioritize. But I'll keep checking those out and see if I can hit some of your comments. Now looking at this, looking at the scales that I'm trying to create in the back, these little mushroom scales, there's some gaps being created in the back, and some of those should be fine. A lot of them would be a problem. That's why I was trying to see what it would look like if I just had some on the back. Another thing I can do is to use my Move Topological brush to really play with it, you know? Play with the shapes. And then really come up with, you know, the voice that I'm going for. When I say voice, I'm trying to mean more design voice too. The scales are what really makes it a stegosaur. So we're going to find a good way to represent that. Stay authentic to the character that people love. Whoop. See what happens if we shrink the butt down. Nope, that doesn't look cute. One thing I might do is merge the tail and the butt together. So let's actually do that. I'm going to select the body, split that off, and let's find the tail. It's down there. So merge these two pieces together and Dynamesh them together as well. That way I can smooth from the tail directly into the body. Now with all my Fungisaurs, I've always thought about making it a specific mushroom with a specific dino. This time, just due to time and not really thinking ahead, I didn't think about what type of mushroom to mix with this Stegosaurus. So that's something I'm going to have to revisit. This will be more of a design exploration, but then I'll have to come back and think about really what would be a good fit for this character. Because there are several mushrooms that do have plates that kind of have their fringe, kind of like the turkey tail I've done with the Dimetrodon. So I might come back to it and decide on a completely different mushroom that doesn't have this classic mushroom shape. We will see. For now, let's try dynameshing all of these spikes together. So I'll duplicate it, and then I will dynamesh them all together. That way it'll kind of fill in those little gaps even better. We'll see what happens. Aaron Winter says, good pacing. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. Trying to find the pace myself with the streaming bits. Always try to make it small to, get a sense of it. Maybe make these back ones really tall too, or inflate them out. Yeah, inflate helps. Gotta make sure these stems stay not that inflated though. So I can alt inflate to kind of shrink them down. Let's try to inflate in this gap, close that up. That looks a bit better. The good thing is, since I am going to try to prototype this character, I might as well show you that as well. Take this from ZBrush to 3D print in this stream. Because I'm actually digging what it's looking like so far. Let's see how far we can take it. So I like how I've got a bit of a jowly thing going on in the neck. I want to see if I can make that part of more of the character. What I mean by that is, what if there's a bit of a wrinkle here, around the arm, and around the leg? And then inflate, to kind of make it feel more like a wrinkle. Remember, when you're creating wrinkles, start with them standard, but really inflate is what adds that heaviness of a wrinkle. And then you can smooth out the top part of it, leave most of the crease at the bottom. And that makes it feel like more gravity is affecting it. Smooth out whatever you want to minimize. Inflate out the whole thing if you want to. Let's add a bit more of those Damn standard plates at the bottom. See if they look good. That's really what character experimentation is about. Trying things and seeing if they stick. They look good. Now that I see the tail from the bottom, I kind of want to make it a bit wider. A wider tail will make for easier printing and it'll be a bit cuter too. Nice. Digging the kind of shapes we've got going on. Thinking about this transition here, might want to ease up on it a bit. Make the biggest ones just these on the back. Hope everyone's having a good Monday. I had a fun weekend. Went out to Palm Springs area for the first time. It's one thing I like about living near LA is that there's a lot of places you can travel to, and it's completely different. Like you can travel to an ocean, you can travel to mountains, you can travel to desert, all within a couple hours. All right. Now, one thing that can help us just visualize this character a bit better is if we don't think about colors and values so much. Because right now you see when I click on every part, it highlights it. And that changes the color. So one thing I can do is maybe divide it all up so that it's the same level of topology. So I'm just not thinking about topology. And then I can go to my Z plugin, turn on mRGB, Z plugin, Subtool Master, and I can do a fill on color and material. And that'll just fill all my subtools with the color and material, RS Sculpey at RGB intensity 100. And that just gives me a more, cleaner way of looking at this character. Digging it. Come back to the body, refine some of these breakups that I'm doing at the bottom. Matthias Zadikov is asking, which methods do I use to hollow the models for 3D printing? That's a great question, Matthias. It depends. I can hollow in ZBrush. I hollow in Mesh Mixer often because Mesh Mixer lets me choose the amount to hollow. Like I can set 2mm hollow, 3mm hollow. That can be really helpful. But in this case, I don't need to hollow this mesh. I could show you, if anyone's interested, how to hollow a mesh. Make this body a bit denser, pudgier. This feels a bit cuter when you do that. Maybe make the butt a bit bigger. All right, and if I wanted to hollow this body mesh, I'm going to save this first. Stego 2. All right, say if I wanted to hollow this mesh, I'd go to my inserts again. Insert primitives work really well. And maybe let's say select an insert cylinder. Now when you draw on an insert cylinder, I'm going to turn off symmetry. You see it draws on coming outward. Well, the depth is important here. I want to make the depth a bit lower so that it completely buries into the mesh like that. But instead of just drawing it out, I want to draw it out as I hold Alt. And what you can see there is that it creates kind of a negative. I can drop that mask and then I can go to my geometry, create shell. And that's where the thickness comes into play. It's basically going to create a shell based on this negative cylinder primitive that I just inserted. So now let's just click create shell and it'll use the Dynamesh resolution. click Create Shell, see what happens. There we go. That's it, hollowing in ZBrush, that fast. You can see how it, let's see, maybe I will solo it out and hide half the mesh. Nope, not clip, hide, to show you what it did. I can also turn on the display properties double, so you can see that edge. And that's what hollowing in ZBrush looks like. The create shell function at the thickness that it was at, Dynamesh at 128, thickness at 4, did this result. Let's try a different one. Say if I increase the thickness, so I'll undo back a little bit, increase the thickness to say 15, resolution up to 200, and then try creating shell. We'll see what that looks like. All right, Nelius is asking, could you please show us how to make an inset key? Yeah, I can show you that, for sure, man. All right, Hobo is asking, damn, that's cool. Now you've got a hole in the mesh. How do you properly patch that up? That's a good question also. It really depends on your character. I would probably not make a hole there. I would patch it up with a Tamiya putty primer. That's something I use 3D printing to fill in holes. What did I do? Double that. There we go. So you can see the thickness of 10 created a completely different thickness, and also increasing the resolution changed the way this hole would be made. You see how it creates some different pockets too, because when the thickness is set too high, it's going to kind of hollow the parts that it can, which is this club in the tail gets hollowed, but it's not connected to the rest of my mesh. So that's kind of pointless. You always want this to be connected, because this kind of hollow piece on its own without any ventilation holes for excess resin or excess powder to come out of can sometimes cause print failures. So I would probably delete that piece in any case. But hopefully that answers your question, Mateus, how I hollow. I'm going to get rid of that because I don't really need to hollow this mesh. It's going to be printed pretty small, remember. This is about the scale that these guys are printed, so maybe about 2 inches tall. And in that case, you don't need to hollow because you're not really saving much on material cost. Oh, I see something weird going on this lower jaw, so I'm going to try to smooth that out. Dynamesh that. Well, 500 is probably too high of a resolution. There we go. All right, that's pretty interesting. I think I might want to continue the pattern of this, the flow of the body, by bringing the tail down, the bottom of the tail. And that'll also make the character more stable, because right now it's relying on just the 4 legs. Might be better to rely a bit more on the tail. See if that makes it a cuter character too. With the whole tail on the ground. Let's see. I'm looking up Stegosaurus on my right here, just looking at reference. Always good to see some reference. Don't be afraid to check it out at any point. Stegosaurus does have spikes on his tail. Looks like it's got 4 that go in opposite directions. So I'm going to opt for that. I'm going to see how far I can push those. Go with the 4 spikes. Bring this tail in a bit. Bring these spikes down a bit. All right, I'm going to show you how to do the inset mesh key as soon as I'm done a bit further with this body. And I've got 30 minutes left on this stream, so that's plenty of time to pull it off. All right. Looks like I didn't have symmetry turned on, so some of my mesh is a bit out of whack now. I can always go to mirror and weld and should fix that right up. Some nice fun music. All right. Now, they don't really have a club on their tails, so I'm going to get rid of the club. Make sure my symmetry gets turned back on. There we go. Smooth that to a point. You know, what would be fun is using the Sculptor's Pro mode here to make these spikes. Let's see if we can pull that off. I like that too. It's a bit cuter with the tail being a bit nubby like that. And it won't be sharp, so it won't be poking kids' eyes out. It's another thing you've got to think about when making something practical is user experience. Okay. I'll go to my snake hook brush. I'll turn on Sculptress Pro so we can pull these out. Now we don't want really big spikes. Looking at the reference, looks like they have 4, kind of like that. Now these are a bit close, so I might want to do it from a different angle, like that. But these are a bit forward. Maybe this angle. That's pretty nice. Might want to turn these spikes into mushrooms as well, but we'll see. I kind of like having a little bit of authenticity to the actual dinosaur in each creation of mine. Not making these too long, because remember, if I make them too long, thinking about printing, these might end up breaking, or, you know, in real world setting, they might hurt a kid. Got to check them out from all angles. Dynamesh, smooth. I like these spikes. It helps it to feel much more like a stegosaur, just having a few more spikes there. All right, that's looking pretty fun to me. I can think about a pose now for the character, if I want it to be just kind of blah, like this, or if I want to maybe add a little bit of a curve, a little bit more asymmetry, you know? So one thing I can do is merge visible, and that'll create a new subtool with everything in one piece. And then I can append it. So I'll go to my append and append the merged Stegosaurus. And there's my merged character all in one piece. Press Ctrl W to unify the groups. I can even Dynamesh the whole thing together. Let's do that. 128 resolution is a bit low though. You see it kind of kills a lot of the character's details. Let's say 500. It goes from 2.7 million polys right now down to 4.4. So it increased it a bit. So 500 is probably too much. Let's go with 300. Cool, that's still working. That's still working. Mateus asking, have you checked out the new ceramic resin? I'm afraid of burning up my house flaming it. No, I did see their video. I mean, that's one cool thing about 3D printing is that there's so many material scientists working on new materials. So yeah, I'm excited to try the ceramic. I wouldn't do it at home, the burnouts part at least. Let's see. Yeah, I definitely want to get ceramic. Right now, I want to play with Formlabs wax resin again, you know, kind of the burnout ability to create jewelry pieces. That's what I'm getting more interested in myself. All right, that worked. So all these pieces got merged together. You can see it's about 2 million polys. I can turn off my reference by just pressing Shift Z. And I want to smooth these pieces together, but I don't want Sculptris Pro on anymore. So I'm just going to start smoothing. And if you feel like your smooth is not working well enough because your resolution is too high, you might want to switch to a stronger smooth brush. You can access that in Lightbox under Brush, Smooth, wherever smooth is, there it is. And there's Smooth Stronger. So I'll just double click that, and then whenever I press Shift, it'll use Smooth Stronger. So I use this pretty often because this brush can smooth even millions of polys really well. Alright, there we go. Smoothing a bunch of this stuff. One thing I'm thinking now that I see it, these ends of these hands are pretty small. I don't know if that's going to be too small, but it might be. Let's see what happens if we make them a bit larger. So I'm going to select those, go to my scale, just make them a bit larger. Want to do this with symmetry turned on. Give them like really Mickey Mouse gloves there. That's too big. A little bit of scale, not that much. Yeah, that should be good. Move them back into place. Dynamesh again. Let's see if I smooth those out, if I like that better. I do. And it's another practical consideration. You've got to think about when making real-world objects, you've got to think like an engineer. You've got to think, will it actually be able to stand on its own? Balance, weight distribution, all these things come into play when you're sculpting for 3D print. Mateus asking, do you still prefer the old Gizmo? Yep, I do prefer the old school Transpose Master features. So far. Maybe once I play with this new Gizmo a bit more, I'll get used to it. Alright, so I scaled the front legs, I'm going to scale the back legs too. And then I'm going to move on to the inset demo, and then I'm going to get this ready for print. Alright, so scale it up. Didn't do much, so that little bit should do the trick. Get it up in place, and make sure it's also properly in place this way. And then I can check the scale. So that's useful. Check the scale against the front legs. Okay. Looks good that way, looks good that way. Drop it, Dynamesh it, and then smooth out. There we go. Smooth that leg out a bit. It's looking good. Smooth out some of these plates. You know what would be good is if the tail was actually on the ground plane as well. That way giving extra support. So, got my symmetry turned on. I'm going to bring the tail down to ground level. And then I'll use my clip curve brush to just clip everything at the same time. Now you can see I've got a really nice chunk of space on the ground with the tail as well. Probably add more. Let's get more of it down. And instead of clip curving again, I can use the trim adaptive brush to kind of just make it adapt to make whatever this piece is adapt down. So if I bring this part down a bit, I can use my trim adaptive to just increase it up. Oop. That's probably too much. Got a little too trim happy there. You know, actually, I think this will be fine, at least for the purposes of this first prototype. All right, that's looking pretty cute, but I think a little bit of a pose couldn't hurt. Let's see, what would look interesting? What would look interesting for this design? What would be appealing for this design? I think I'm going to keep the pose really simple, just for the sake of time. I'm just going to rotate the tail out of it. So I'm going to select, turn off my symmetry, mask the selection right at this one little shroom right there. And you know what? I've been meaning to play with some of these new tools in ZBrush with the Gizmo. Let's try it. I can switch to my Move tool, turn on my Gizmo, and see under the settings there's a bend. So there's a bend arc and a bend curve. Let's see what would happen. There's bend arc. Looks like it does it based on the entire mesh, so it's not really easily suited to just bending my tail. Yeah, since it's doing it from the middle, that's not really the right tool of choice for this particular activity. Let's go back to just my rotate transpose, see if I can do something here. I can just rotate it bit by bit. That'll be suited to my purposes right now. A little bit of asymmetry always helps in character design. Smooth that out. Dynamesh this. Smooth it out again. I'm just going to try to get rid of some of those wrinkling. Looks like a snail. Its tail looks like a snail. I can rhyme. Okay. All right, I'm not going to care too much about all these little details. We're running out of time, and I want to get this into Preform. But I think just that little bit of asymmetry helped, you know, get it not be so perfect. Adds more character to the character. All right, so that's looking pretty interesting. I wanted to show Nilias how to do the inset mesh key. So let's do an inset key really quickly. I've got my keys in a articulation brush that I've created here. So a whole bunch of different keys. And my favorite is the tapered square. So you can make a tapered square key really easily by just creating a cube and, you know, doing a little taper deformation. When you draw out your key with the tapered square selected, you can see it's going to draw it out like that. Say if I wanted to split this character into two pieces and I wanted to have part of it buried into, how should I explain this best? What is an inset key would be a good place to start for those that aren't familiar with what Nilias is asking. An inset key is a key that is hidden so you don't see that seam line as easily. So say, for example, let's use this character's arm as a reference point. I'm going to duplicate it or work on clone. That might be the best way. I'll clone it so I'm working on a clean area. Say I wanted to key off this character's leg and have it key onto the body. I can do a select, mask lasso, right there, add a seam, so it's kind of, you know, hidden anyway. And I can go to split, unmask points. This way I've got these legs kind of on their own thing. I can go to geometry, Dynamesh, smooth those pieces out, and I can add a key here. Let's go to my keys brush again. Draw it down, maybe even change up the key a little bit to be a bit taller. Maybe scale it down a bit, move it into place. Invert this selection, maybe inflate this end a bit. All right, so that could be a standard key. Now if I subtract this key mesh out of the other piece, then I'll be able to have a regular key into my character. Let's take a look. My insert mesh brush for keys comes with two pieces. So I've got the outside piece and the inside piece usually. In this case I don't in this mesh, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the key. I'm going to split it off into its own subtool, split on mask points. I'll duplicate it, and this will be my cutter, and this will be my key. With my cutter, I can dynamesh it. Want to make sure you have enough resolution so you don't lose it. All right. So now I've dynameshed this, and my key and cutter are the same size right now. So I want to go to deformation and inflate my cutter a little bit so I can account for creating negative space properly. So it looks like an inflate of 2 did the trick. I'll dynamesh again, and so you can see what's going on. I'll turn on both the key and cutter with transparency mode on, so you can see there's a little bit of tolerance. You always want to think about that when creating your cutter. With the cutter, I'm going to use the negative here, and I'm going to try to cut that out of my character mesh. So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways. This is just standard keying, and I'll show the inset key next. I'll go to this character, solo that out for a second, and I want to dynamesh this too. I want to close that up. So I'm going to go to Geometry, Dynamesh, fill that up, smooth it out. Whoop. Make sure symmetry is on when I smooth. Maybe bring this whole thing down a bit. And let's turn my legs back on. All right. So say I wanted to key the leg out of the upper body. So basically I'm keying the arm out of the shoulder piece that I've got going on. A regular key is when you've got both the top and the bottom right in the same spot. So for example, I'm going to use the clip curve here to clip down to there, maybe a little bit higher, like there. Smooth that down. I'll do the same on the legs, so I'll go to the legs. I'm going to do a group split, so those keys are on their own piece. I'm going to move this up a bit. Into the body, and I'm going to key, I'm going to clip curve that as well. So now what's happened is this leg ends right kind of where this body begins. And that would be a standard key where you can see where one key meets the other point. So let's show you that first. So in this case, I'm going to duplicate, and I'll show you both variations. So there's my key and the leg. I can merge these two pieces together, merge down. Right now they're still separate, but I'll dynamesh them together. Got to keep a high enough resolution. That's a bit low still. Maybe 1,000. 1,000, not 100. Okay. So there we go. We've got that mesh all set up. Now I'm going to go to my body, and what I'm going to do is I'll use the cutter to cut out of the body the negative shape for my key. So check this out. I'm going to bring the cutter below my key, and I'm going to set it as a subtractor. So that's important. I'm also going to group as Dynamesh sub, and that you can see will change it up a little bit. It changes the poly group. That's also located under poly groups, group as Dynamesh sub. Then I can go to my body, make sure the it has been Dynamesh. I think we were using what, a resolution of about 1000. One, 2, 3. There we go. I'm going to then Dynamesh it. And right now it's two separate subtools. When you want to cut something or boolean something out of another mesh in ZBrush, you've got to merge it down onto a cutter that has been designated as a Dynamesh sub. So I'm just going to go to merge down now, and with my regular Dynamesh at 1000, it's going to cut that cutter out of my body. Fingers crossed I don't crash. There you go. So there's my cutter that has been cut out of the body. This means that these legs should just slide right into place now. So let's take a look. If I move these down, you can get an idea of what's happening. So this is a standard key. This is when your character, you can see where the key fits into the body, and it's like a flat surface up against a flat surface. What Nehru's is asking, what Nelius is asking, is how to create an inset key. And what an inset key is basically not flat on flat. It's a little bit of hiding your key. So I'll show you that next. This might stretch a little bit longer than 10. Maybe I'll go to 10, 15 in order to show both these things. But what I'm going to do now is, let's say, for example, these legs didn't kind of stop there. They went into the shoulder a bit. That's how you'd create an inset. That's basically it. I might select these legs. I might move them up a bit higher into my mesh. And what I can do is duplicate these. I can use my deformation tab to inflate this whole thing a little bit, maybe by 2 or 3. Dynamesh that. And instead of using a cutter, I'm actually going to use this mesh as the cutter. So I'll change this to Dynamesh sub, group it as Dynamesh sub. You can see that happen. And I'm going to use that to cut out of my body. So I can use the same mesh. I can probably just undo before the key was done. Come down to here, Dynamesh it at 1000. Make sure that's ready to go. Cool. And now that this is, grouped and ready to Dynamesh, and my legs are grouped as a Dynamesh sub cutter, and they're a bit higher up into my mesh, now what I can do, just duplicate these so I can go back a bit. Group as Dynamesh sub. Now I can merge these down onto themselves, merge the body down onto the legs, and then do a Dynamesh. Let's see what happens. All right. So what you see now is not a regular key, it's an inset key. So this is a key that's more hidden and more secure. So you've got a little bit of space, a little ledge that hides your key, so you don't see the key that easily. The other mesh, I can undo back before I did the inflates. And now if you turn on transparency mode, you can see that there's an inset. My one arm goes inset into my shoulder. So I've got extra security, and I've got that key hidden much better. So you don't see that line. So I hope that answers your question, Nelias. That's one way of doing it. ZBrush has 100 ways of doing any one thing. All right. Now I don't really need to keep, so I'm just going to leave this as is. I'm going to get this mesh ready for 3D print, and we'll set it off to print and see what it looks like. All right, so I'm going to duplicate this up. I'm going to go to my Z plugin, Decimation Master, Preprocess Current. So it's going to take a second to just pre-process through, and then I can decimate it down and prepare it for print. Let's take a look if you guys have any more questions. Anthony's Customs on here. Got the Demona print I did for him. Another satisfied customer. Awesome, Anthony. Cool. Gray Metal Cat is asking, will you make this thing solid, or would it be sliced as some kind of kit? This one is kind of just design stage exploration and a print prototype. Oftentimes, I'll go through 3 or 4 different rounds of print prototyping one character before I'm happy with it, sending it off to a factory or even trying to make a toy out of it, you know? Prototyping with your own printer, that's kind of really the perk of having your own printer. All right, so that's done its pre-processing. So I'll decimate this down. So I'll take it down from 2 million polys to something like 400K. And that looks pretty good. Let's save this as Stego 2 again. And now let's get it right to the right size. So what I want to do is go to my Z plugin, 3D Print Hub. And 3D Print Hub is where you can control a lot of what happens for 3D print. It's a really cool tool built into ZBrush. Let me lower the volume of this soundtrack here so we're not getting drowned out. Let's kill it actually. All right. Now let me just show you how I'd send this to print or prep it for print. It's already a Dynameshed full watertight mesh, and it's already been decimated. So what's next is to just get it to the printer. Right now at ZBrush, since we started sculpting it out of spheres and Sculptors Pro and just putting different pieces together, we don't know what scale it is. So we have to set the scale when we export out. That's where the 3D Print Hub comes in. I'm going to click on inches just because I'm used to American Standard, and I can click on Update Size Ratios. I just selected whichever option it gave me, and it shows me that the longest point is the Z-axis, which is about 10 inches long. Then it shows me that the Y-axis is the next longest axis, and that's about 5.4, about 6 inches long. That's probably the height. Now I like these creatures all being about 2 inches tall. So I'm going to change the Y-axis to 2, and let's see what that looks like. I'm going to go to my export options. I'll say only selected because I don't want to export out everything. And I can export out to STL. Now STL is a standard print format that you can take and put it into multiple different printers. I've got the Form 2 here. I'm going to use that for my resin print prototype, but I can also use an STL for my FDM printers, the Raise 3D N2 Plus, which is a really big printer, which I hope to show you guys some cool stuff out of in later streaming session. So I can export to STL, or in this case, I could send directly to Preform. And that's a really cool button that ZBrush has set up. So let's see what that does first. Preform is the print prep software for Formlabs 3D printers, including the Form 2 that I've got sitting here to my right. Whisker Keskis is asking, what printer do I use for testing? If it's a really big, expensive print, I'll use the FDM printers, the Raise 3D N2 Plus. This is a really beast of a machine, like 12 by 12 by 24 inches. So really big print area. But FDM printers are great for prototyping because the material cost is really low. It's only like $15 to $20 for an entire spool, like a liter of filament. So that's great for testing. However, for prototyping, when I want that fine resolution, I go with the Form 2, especially for small stuff. All right, so it opened up Preform, and it's saying, what do you want to use, inches or millimeters? Since I exported out in inches, I'll use inches. It'll confront me with what material resin type, and I'm using gray resin, version V4. And you can choose your resolution, layer thickness. 50 microns, 0.05 is standard. That's what I use for all of my toys. 25 microns will make it really fine detail, but most of the time you don't need 25 microns. And 0.1 or 100 microns is standard 3D printing resolution. The FDM printers can almost get to a really good 100 micron resolution. But I want this to be a kind of medium res, so I'll go with 50 microns. And here's my model in Preform. 2 inches height, and that looks pretty perfect. I might want to have this a little bit smaller than it is. It feels a bit big as compared to a lot of the Fungisaurs that I've already created, and I want to keep some sort of scale accuracy. So I could go back to ZBrush and change it up there, or in Preform, I can go to my scale option here and bring it down from 2 inches to, I don't know, let's say 1.5. And that'll adjust it all proportionally. When you're printing for stereolithography, which is resin 3D printing, you want to be able to have it print from small to big. So you got to think of it like an upside down pyramid. Since it's liquid resin, everything should be a little bit bent so you can go from a small point to a big point. So I bend things out pretty often. You can also rotate it at a bit of an angle. That might help. Let's see what it looks like just as is. And I'm going to go to add supports, because for resin 3D printing, you always need supports. Formlabs make this pretty easy. You can click on Preform Supports tab and click Generate Selected based on your density and point size. I'll just go with standard right now and see what it does. Oliver Pew 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 is asking, can Form 2 printer print in quality similar to, say, Prime 1's collectibles models? Yes, I'd say so, because the Form 2 can get really, really clean, fine resolution and detail. Here's a miniature printed on a Form 2. I don't know how well you guys can see that on the camera, but the resolution is insane on this printer. It's actually a printer made for dental 3D printing, so yeah, you can get really fine resolution. At 25 microns, you can barely see any print lines, especially after you do some sanding or dremeling or spray it with primer. I'd say it's Prime 1 resolution for sure. All right, so there I've set my custom orientation, I've set my custom supports, and this thing looks ready to go. I might actually change the layout, looking at it from the top, to set this to the corner, and that's just a good habit so you're not burning out the center of your print tray for every single print. I'll save this in my folder for ZBrush streaming, stream 1, Stego 1, print test, and let's send this to the printer. All I need to do is press this yellow button. That's the name of my printer, Cloudy P-Chick, and I'll click send to print. This will generate the print files and load them directly up in my printer, and it'll be ready to go. You'll see also, actually, hold on, we'll cancel that. It'll say that your prints are either printable or not. Preform helps you out in that sense. So I'm going to actually turn on this little minima and see if it shows me what area it says might not print. So it says that little red area right there needs a support. So I'll go into Edit Supports, and I can add my own custom support. One thing I like to do is also add some really big custom supports to make sure that this print doesn't fall off the print bed. That's just a precaution of mine. So I'll add some really big print supports as well. Save it again, and now I'll send it to print. And that's basically my workflow, guys. We basically started from a sketch that was just a sketch of an idea, made it in ZBrush, and then now it's sending to my 3D printer, so when you tune in to my stream next Monday, it'll be reality. I'll show you guys this print when it comes right out. So that's basically it for my first stream, taking something from sketch to sculpt to 3D printed reality. So hopefully that was useful for you guys. I'm going to let this thing upload and I can show you how to send it to print. Nelias is saying what's not cool with Preform is you can't export the STL file. That's true. You can't export it out. That makes sense because if you think about it from the perspective of a printing company, Form2 made Preform, Formlabs made Preform for their printers. And so, yeah, they want you to use it for their printers. If they allowed you to export an STL, then you could use it for whatever printers. All right, Paul from Pixelogic is saying, great job. Thanks for tuning in, Paul. Appreciate the encouragement. Is this going to be posted on YouTube? I'm not sure. I think they do post it. They keep track of their streams for a couple of weeks. Joanne Riguto is saying, awesome stream. Thank you. You're on my schedule of streams. Appreciate that. I'll try to get better at this streaming thing, answer more of your questions as I go along. Hopefully it wasn't too bad for my first stream. Holly Shepard is asking, what 3D printer do you have? Holly, I have a Form 2 3D printer. That's the one right there. And I've got the Raise 3D M2 Plus. Those are my two at home, FDM and stereolithography. Sculptman84 is saying disorder is CR10. Great idea. CR10 is a really good starter printer. Paul is saying, yes, all streams are instantly uploaded to Pixelogic YouTube and here on our Twitch, so you guys can watch this later. Awesome. Thank you, Paul. All right, cool. So, if you can see my screen still, it's saying file is successfully uploaded. Preform saying this is a go for print. It'll take about 3 hours and 13 minutes at 50 micron resolution. I do not need to track this print right now, so I'll click Not Now. And if I just walk over to my printer, I can say print, and it should get going. I have a print in there that I need to take out, so I'm not going to do that for you guys right now. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this stream, and when you tune in next Monday at this same time, same bat channel, I'll show you the print and what it turned out like. So that's it for this stream. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I will see you next time. I'm going to say bye onto these chats. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week. Oliver Pew Pew's asking, does it have any smell when printing? The FDM printer smells a bit like burned plastic, but not much. It's actually pretty clear. Resin smells like resin and alcohol. Laters, everyone. Cheers.